Hello and welcome to Mommy Dentist in Business podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grace Young. Welcome back, listeners. You know, if you are a first-time listener, I just want to let you know that we are downloaded in over 44 countries and we win awards year after year. And it's just so exciting because we wouldn't win these awards without all of you listening and following along. We have several types of episodes, and what I love most are episodes that feature our own mommy dentist. And today we have one of our very own. And before I introduce you to her, I want to explain that the episode that you're listening to today is March 6th, and it is National Dentist Day. So, hello, we should be celebrating each other. Happy National Dentist Day. And March 8th, which is right around the corner, is International Women's Day. And again, if you know other women that are bosses, wish them a happy International Women's Day. All right. Now, I am joined today by Dr. Julianne Digiorno, who recently attended our CEO Roundtable. And she has been a mommy dentist for I would say quite some time. And she's been an official member for a very long time. And she also is in our Be the Queen. And I really want to welcome her to this podcast. And also, I want everyone to know she is a registered dietitian. Welcome, Dr. Julianne.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you for having me on today. I'm excited to do this.
I am too. And I really want our listeners to get to know you. And my very first question I always ask is, tell the community a little bit more about yourself, something that we don't know, what you do, and how you got to where you are today.
Well, I'm one of the unique ones that knew I wanted to be either a dentist or a doctor from when I was a young girl. My background, my family is medically heavily weighted. You know, my great-grandfather was a dentist that actually did nutrition back in the late 1800s, and he developed pangamic acid, B17, and B15 Laetrile. Vice versa. B15 is pangamic acid. But nonetheless, he did a lot with cancer research and nutrition and everything in the Bay Area. And so I grew up with that somewhat of a background. My parents were very nutrition driven and exercise focused. My dad was a dentist. So it was just kind of always in my face. But I was always the kid in school that the teachers would have a talk with my mom about and say, can you let Julianne do her own things and have her stop mothering the kids? So it was one of those things where it's just in my blood. You know, I just am a caretaker and I love to help people. And I knew I wanted to be a medical professional of some sort. And my dad said, go do something else. Don't do dentistry. It's not going to be around forever. And I thought that was really interesting. He loved what he did. And so I decided to go search and I went into nutrition, applied to med school at the same time I was doing my dietetic internship. And then I was in a bad car accident. Mm-hmm. And so that set me back, but it didn't. It just basically made me refocus, you know, and think a little deeper about what I wanted. And so I was in physical therapy 5 days a week, doing my dietetic internship at the hospital, had sent out my applications for med school and said, I can't do my secondaries. This is too much. And so then I worked as a dietitian and saw such a link with nutrition and dental needs. Yeah. And I thought, you know what, I'm coming back to dentistry because I have more control with my patients. Yeah. And I will see them more often. I can talk with them about nutrition. And so dental became my passion.
I love
yeah. So that's been my focus for 22 years now.
You know, that's really amazing. And I love that everyone has a different story, has a different journey. And our theme actually for Mommy Dentist for our social summit that's coming up in September is share your story. And we're carrying that share your story theme throughout the year for the community. And it's so powerful when we get to know one another and share our stories because one, it connects us, and two, it showcases how we ended up being dentists, right? And being dental practice owners and so forth. Now, I wanted
Yeah.
to talk about the CEO Roundtable. We just had it in January, and I wanted to ask you, what was one insight or mindset shift that immediately changed how you lead your practice?
I think they kind of build on each other each year, so each CEO roundtable has had a different impact for me. Ironically, they've kind of followed my own mindset path. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's been refreshing when I go there because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm already starting to look at some of these things. And then I get a course at the CEO roundtable that's, teaching me more than I knew. So then I can come back and implement things. And the courses are very easy to understand. They're very concise, but interactive. And, we're a small group of women that can get together and input, our current situation. So we learn from each other and we learn from the course speaker as well. I think for myself, one of the biggest pieces is communication. I
Mm-hmm.
walked away with enhanced skills on how to communicate with my staff. And I think
Mm-hmm.
we all can experience that struggle
Yes.
and the frustrations or the fear of having that conversation, whether it
Yep.
be with your staff or your
Mm-hmm.
spouse or your
Mm-hmm.
children, whatever it may be, those are usually very dreaded, times.
Mm-hmm.
So learning some of the skills from the roundtable
Mm-hmm.
just helped me or reminded me of pieces that I tend to forget, as far as like knowing your roadblocks and having people be accountable for their own actions, not going in trying to fix everything for them,
Right.
make them understand. And it's okay to not have a conversation right away. It's okay
Absolutely.
to table it and say, let's have a meeting tomorrow at this time. Can you make that work? And then you can kind of think about things. I think in the past for me, I've always wanted to handle everything right away and
Yeah.
handle it entirely instead of having it
Right.
be a conversation,
Oh, absolutely. I can totally relate, right?
Yeah.
When I reflect back as a younger leader, right? And when I mean leader, folks, if you're listening, you don't necessarily have to be a business owner. I mean, how many times as an associate do team members come to you with things they want to talk about, right? And I know it happened to me at different offices that I worked at as well. And so to Julianne's point, we do talk about, hey, sit on this for a little bit. Don't react so fast. Sit on it, sleep on it. You don't have to solve the problem because we are problem solvers and we don't, right? You especially,
Absolutely.
you especially,
Yes.
but also because you have 10,000 other things you have to do, right? So you just want, if something lands on your plate, you just want to clear it, clear it, clear it. Like
Absolutely.
that's because we have so much and the mental
Yeah.
load.
I have my list and
Right.
check off, check off, check off,
Check and
move on.
yeah, but everything's urgent, like everything, right? Like you
Right.
can't even
Yeah.
prioritize what has to go first because you want to do everything. So I think that what makes the CEO Roundtable unique is that we're so like-minded, right? We're all kind of like cut from the same cloth, birds of a feather, what you will. But we are women that sit in this room and are like, well, of course we want to take care of everything. I don't want to wait till tomorrow.
Yeah. And it's a big enough group, but yet it's still intimate enough that you really do get to know so many of the women and people that you may look at and feel like, maybe they're, I don't know, at this level or, a certain type of practice or something like that. And you find out when you start speaking that you, like you said, you're very similar and you both have experienced a lot of the same things and you're really not as different as the other. And then you start just forming these organic bonds with
Yeah.
women, and for me, it's refreshing because I feel like dentistry can be very lonely and
100%.
isolating,
100%.
so that I love the CEO roundtable. I'll be honest, more than the summit because I have the intimacy. I do enjoy the summit for a whole different piece,
Right.
but the CEO roundtable, I enjoy the intimacy of it.
Yes. And they're two different, meetings,
Right.
and and we can talk about the summit in a little bit, but focused on being a CEO, that's where we kind of narrow things down, right? Like the summit is general, everyone can come, associates,
Right.
owners, etc. But this is where you, as a woman CEO in dentistry, right? Like this is where the bonds kind of organically form. And
Absolutely.
I was hoping that maybe you have, like, if you don't mind sharing an example or one challenge as a CEO that you faced that ultimately made you stronger in your leadership, and what advice from that example would you give to another woman?
My practice ownership happened rather quickly. My practice I was in was my practice from day one, but with my dad being a dentist, we just left everything in his name. So we had two practices. And the intention was taking over when he retired and, being the owner for whether it be one or both. Well, he ended up having to retire really quickly for a broken back.
Mm,
And he couldn't sell his practice. So I said, okay, I'll buy
mm,
it from you, Dad,
mm,
because, I didn't want him to stress. He's got a broken back and I didn't want the patients to suffer
mm.
with somebody, those people have been a part of my life, honestly, some of them for 40 years, so
Right, right.
they're like family for me. So I took on the challenge of two practices right after COVID. And
That's a lot.
And I
Wow.
have not actually, I ran the practice myself, but I didn't have all the numbers. I
Hmm.
didn't know what was being taken home. I didn't know what was being paid out because my mom was the one in charge of all that. So I got little pieces for about 17 years,
Mm,
16
mm,
years. And so all I knew was what I had to do every day to produce, but
mm,
I didn't know the business side because she would not give me any information. And
mm,
so, anyhow, I jumped in, I bought the buildings and I bought the practices,
mm,
and then I was going to figure it out. And
mm,
so at that point, all my staff at my dad's office quit.
mm.
And I was like, okay, I've got this. Like, what else am I going to do?
Right,
But
right.
I think that we don't know how to run a business because we're not taught that.
Right.
But what we don't realize is it's really not that hard. It's just being consistent and having people to go to help guide you and not be afraid to ask for those
Mm-hmm,
pieces of
mm-hmm,
help that you need. So for myself, jumping into all that, I thought, oh my gosh, I really don't know all the ins and outs of running a business,
mm-hmm,
but I need to find somebody that can help me. So I jumped into a management group that could teach me to be a leader, but also guide me with some of the KPIs and just different
mm-hmm,
pieces of the business, gaining the confidence to speak to staff. I had some staff that were toxic,
mm,
and it was almost like a challenge of power.
mm,
So they didn't want to listen to me. They worked for my dad more, and things like
mm.
that. So there was some struggles that way. And then not having the confidence to run a business, knowing what to say, the fear of somebody, I'm in California, the fear of somebody filing some retaliation type thing
Yes.
or, a grievance over anything, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah.
so I was really nervous with that stuff. And so
Sure.
I had to go and get the management group to
Yeah.
help guide me. And in a year, it took me a year. I was
Yeah.
going down to Anaheim every 2 weeks during COVID
Yeah.
and learning the information so that
Mm,
even just prior to ownership, I could come
right.
back and feel more
Sure.
confident. So I think the biggest piece is to invest in yourself. And I know we get scared by that because it's like, we don't have the money for this. And, gosh, that's so expensive. But I will tell you for myself, that was a world of difference. And I feel like I can handle anything.
I
It may
love
not be
that.
easy. It may not be easy, but it
No.
always works out.
Well, it always works out, but here's the thing. You took the horns, right? Am I saying it
Yeah.
right? I always
The
you
bull
took
by the
the bull
horns.
by the
Yeah.
bull by the
Yeah.
horns, right? Like you did that, but there are a lot of women who have yet to take the courage to do that, right? Because once you do that, then it's like a domino effect, right? And then
Correct.
you're like, you know what? Come hell or high water, I'm going to do this. right? Like you're just kind of like,
For me, I am one of those. I'm a bull. I'm a Taurus, so I'm stubborn, and I do not want to be defeated.
right.
And it's a personal thing. It's not, competitive with my partner,
No,
colleague or something
no.
like that. These are all internal, personal,
Yes.
goals for myself. I don't
Yes.
want to fail, and I'm sure there's plenty of women, we're moms
Right.
that feel that way too. And I think you take one step at a time, pick one piece of
Yes.
it that
Yes.
you want to learn.
Yeah.
You're not going to tackle it all in a day.
No, you
It's
chew off the elephant one piece at a time, right?
absolutely. And
Yeah.
and then your confidence starts to grow. So, if you look at everything in your practice and say, I've got to do this as a business owner, oh my gosh,
It's
you're going to
overwhelming.
lose yourself.
Yeah.
So if you pick one piece and say, I'm going to get this done, then
Right.
the next one becomes a little easier,
Right.
you
So
know.
like my next question for you then is like, because you decided, right? You decided. And that's where the first step is, making that decision. You
Yes.
made the decision to tackle this. And I do want to say, I applaud you for buying your father's practice and the building because your father was um, going through a medical difficult time. And I think as daughters, we do that. We step up,
Yes.
right?
Absolutely.
As daughters, we step up and we are there for our family. And it's not easy to do, especially during COVID, and it's overwhelming. But is there a decision you made as a practice owner that felt risky at the time, but it paid off in a big way?
Yes, absolutely, because the loan I took was really big. And I've been doing this at that point for 16 years.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And I'm like, wow, this is what I took out and have been paying for 16 years ago
mm-hmm,
under my parents' name. And now
mm-hmm.
I'm doing it all over again.
Yeah.
So that was, but I took short loans out,
Mm-hmm.
and it was scary, but I knew that I just had to do it. I mean, that's just, I guess, maybe my personality. And I understand that not everybody has that personality
Sure.
of, just really getting. I mean, there's days that I didn't want to,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
keep going with that stuff. There's days where my bank account gets really thin, and
Of
it's like,
course.
well, what's going on?
Of
And
course.
every day is a different day. But I just kind of take it as an everyday approach. However, I think meetings with some of my, leaders on my team have been helpful as well, and making it a small, like, management meeting and keeping things focused.
Mhm.
So I really, what was my option? I'm going to go be an
Right.
associate somewhere else or have
Right.
work for somebody other than myself and that's hard because I've been doing it for a
Mm-hmm.
long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I just had faith that,
Yeah.
I'll be okay.
I love that. You do. Sometimes it is like
Yeah.
faith based, right? Like you just
Yeah.
have to just trust that, hey, the universe has you, right? Like this is going to
Yes.
pan out. And I think you need that positive thinking. A lot of entrepreneurs need to have that positive thinking to get through, their careers. And
And for me, I had, my personal life too is challenging, and my son's health was challenging. He was at that point getting close to being on the transplant list. And
mm-hmm.
so I was burning the candle at both ends because
Yeah.
I was going down to Stanford to do doctor's appointments with him. And I was the one that did all the work with him. My husband
Yeah.
didn't do those things. So I was stretched very thin, and I was working both practices
Yeah.
because of that debt that I
Right.
had.
Right.
But, in some aspects, it keeps you going when you don't have time to think about
Sure.
the
Sure.
alternative, you
Right.
know.
Right. No, I agree. And with National Dentist Day coming up, or not coming up, we are like the episode is National Dentist Day. Anyway, what do you think today's dentists need to understand about running a modern practice that wasn't talked about 5, 10 years ago? And I only want to ask this question because you've purchased your father's practice, right? So like you're third generation dentist and you're buying your father's practice. And again, you said a lot of his employees that were there for 40 years decided to move on. But now you have seen two different versions. So what is it that we need to know about running a modern practice?
Well, my dad and I definitely worked differently. When he ran the practice, there was very separate roles. He was the clinician. He didn't have anything to do with the business.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom did everything with the business. Now, maybe that was different just because husband and wife running
Sure.
it as
Sure.
well. But I didn't have that.
Yeah,
So,
right. You don't
you
have
know,
that.
I didn't have a partner that could run a piece of my practice and me
Mm-hmm.
feel comfortable with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think communication is probably one of the biggest pieces to running a modern day practice. Developing the relationships with not only your staff but your patients as well.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was much more of a drill and fill, although he did talk with patients about nutrition and health,
Mm-hmm.
but the primary was drill and fill.
Yeah,
I think now it's more business focused in a
sure.
sense, but also relationship based. You
Right.
know, you have to hear your patients.
Yeah.
You have to be open minded. You
Yeah.
have to be a little bit, have a little bit of a mind shift. Coming out of dental school, we learned so much of the clinical pieces that it's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes hard to come out and understand the other aspects and that they're just as valuable, you
Absolutely.
know. So I think being open minded and willing to grow, we don't know everything coming out of dental school, even clinically,
Mm-hmm.
and if you want to become the best in a business sense, be open minded to learning things and not think that you know it all, and find groups to collaborate with,
Mm-hmm.
and pick pieces that you want to, tackle and really, I guess, become very comfortable with them. It's hard to say. Every area is different. My area is very health based.
Yeah.
California, I'm in a young family population. Everybody wants to be healthy. So, my wellness dental office is thriving because of that. But me taking the time to grow my knowledge in that instead
Mm-hmm.
of feeling like I'm not doing that. I'm just going to drill and fill. You just create a much more, I think, happy and balanced practice. I don't know if that makes much sense, but
Mm-hmm.
it's a daily learning, really.
It really is.
It's different.
It's daily learning and it's daily communication. And again, like you said, every dentist is going to be different, right? And have different experiences. But I do think it's really interesting about the communication aspect. And again, we didn't have spouses. I didn't have a spouse that was managing my office either, right? It's all on you. It's all on your shoulders.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big difference. And I'm going to say to all the doctors who are listening that if your spouse is part of your practice and running it, you are very lucky, right?
Right. I agree.
But there's a caveat. There is a caveat because
Sure.
and I'm just going to say this because you'll know. I had one young dentist, and she, she's not multi-generational or anything like that, but she had a startup, and she gave up her associateship. But then she's in a startup, mind you. Her husband gave up his job to work in the startup, and now suddenly she's reaching out to me and saying, "I can't even pay my rent at
Yeah.
home." And I was just like, your husband needs to go back to work.
Right.
You are not in a position where he can run the office for you. You have to learn to run this business on your own. Because if you can't feed your family and you can't even
Yeah.
pay for the roof over your head, this is not a good situation.
Yeah.
And so I do want to add that just because your spouse is running the practice, it doesn't necessarily equate to you will be successful, right?
Right. No, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I do have a piece of advice that my mom gave me when I was new in dentistry because of what frustrated her with my dad. Like I said, they were very separate, right? He never got involved with certain things. And he was the type of dentist that he had his stuff set and he didn't want to change anything,
Of course.
And so my mom said, like, for example, my dad didn't do his own injections.
Mm. Okay.
His hygienist would go in and do his injections. He was fantastic at it. He just didn't want to do it. And so the hygienist would go do it. He'd do exams. And if a hygienist called out, my dad wouldn't work. Because he would not go do his own injections. And I was like, you have got to be kidding me. So my mom always told me, do not depend on anybody in your practice.
Yes.
Be self-sufficient. Know how to do everything.
Yes.
And, from a young age, I knew the front desk because I worked in the practice. So that was a blessing. Not everybody gets that opportunity.
100%.
But that's what you have to know. So if your front desk calls out, you're not crippled. You can still work with your receptionist out or your dental assistants out. You can still work by yourself. You can still send claims, know all those things.
Absolutely.
As a practice owner.
I absolutely love that because in my offices, I had everyone cross-trained.
Me too.
You just have to, because again, you do not want to be crippled, right?
Correct.
I think people who are listening, just take that nugget and plant that seed because it's more advantageous to everyone if you can have. I'm not saying that they have to know the other person's job 100%, but they just need to know enough to get by.
It's a function to be able to make that day still succeed without that person being in the practice. Not every practice has multiple bodies for the same positions, and so that's an important piece, I think. So if you were to walk away from this today with just one little pearl, that would be, I think worth its weight in gold, just knowing every position enough to be, surviving, make it through that day, make it through that day,
Make it through the day, but not only that, as a CEO, right? Coming from a practice owner business standpoint, you can run a tight ship. You don't need extra hands, right? You don't need to be like, well, I only have this one person and she only does insurance, right? Yeah. And then you have one person that only does this. Like, no, you cannot have specialists in your office unless they're the doctor.
Right. Well, one thing that I liked with having the opportunity to step in the roles of the others, do you remember that show we had that was it like Undercover Bosses? Do you remember that show where the bosses would go in and they
and pretend
of their business?
Yes.
And they got to see how things ran and they got to see how things maybe were not running as they wanted. So I always went in with that lens on when I would work in those positions. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So where's this? How come that's not there? And why don't we have the, And so I was able to come away from that going, okay, now I know what we need to do. And that's just part of the CEO piece, and you can, kind of iron out some of those pieces that you wouldn't have been aware of otherwise.
Well, knowledge is power, right? Like like you said, if you have the opportunity, you grew up in dentistry, right? So you work the front desk, and I, started at 18 and I worked the front desk, right? And when you work every single role as a young person, as a student, and rotate through and work in multiple, places, and then it only benefits you as the owner, like you said, right? So you can see what's not being done, or you can call somebody out on it. Not blame game, but you could just say, hey, you forgot this step. Like, this is an important part of the step. And you know why? I know, because I did it.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are confused or unknowing of their steps, but they don't come to you. So they just keep doing and hope that it's never, noticed.
Right.
So you can help them as well grow by that communication, is this something that you're not understanding really well? I don't think it's with intention that it's not being done, but, I noticed this, let's, make sure you're, so it just helps, I think, keep the practice more of a tight running ship, or, being able to keep growing. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to throw you another question, and it's kind of like a mix of CEO and be the queen. How do you maintain your clinical excellence while also being the CEO? Like, what habits or what systems or boundaries do you put in place that help you to stay at that level of being wearing the hat of dentist and CEO?
I'm not very good with the boundaries because I have a hard time saying no. But I'm getting better with it. I think with my son's health now at a stage that's good.
Hmm.
Um, the last couple of years, I'm now putting myself first.
Good.
And I think that's important for all of us women because we tend to forget that. And not to say that you're going to neglect somebody, but I always felt like I had to please everybody and do everything to make everybody else happy. And that's just the way it is. And then kind of reflected on that. And my parents said to me one day, "You don't know what joy is anymore." And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, huh, interesting that you pick up on that because it's very true. I have lost a lot of myself because I've become so wrapped up in the dental world and not so much, outside with classes and things like that, just in this dental mindset of being, I don't know, setting myself up for perfection. I don't know exactly how to explain it, but I reflected on that. And I think it comes from a lot of different parts of my life. And so I decided, you come around once, we have a life to live, and you got to live it how you want to live it.
Mm-hmm.
At some
100%.
point, at some point you may disappoint people, but I think at the end of the day, those people maybe are not meant to be in your circle.
Right. Right.
And so I became comfortable with that. And I said, I need to take care of me
Yep.
because of my car accident. I've had years of issues. And so
Mm-hmm.
now those are non-negotiable. So that's a boundary for me. My health being that my mental health, my physical health, my diet, all of those things come first and everything
Absolutely.
else falls into play.
Fall into play. Yeah.
But it makes my business easier to run because
Mm-hmm.
I feel better. So then I have more of a system of my daily
Yeah.
flow,
Yeah.
whether it's, just business or personal. My calendar has their spots and I go in with intention
Mm-hmm. I love
and,
that.
I make my actions count. So that helps because I don't find I'm doing, a task for so long because I'm not really checked in.
Sure.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that that's, getting systems in place are forever, ongoing. I
Yeah.
don't think they're ever completed, or at
Right.
least I haven't gotten to that point yet.
Right.
So, but systems are super helpful, getting your team to run without you there.
Right.
So you free up your own time, you buy back your time. I think with the Be the Queen, the who's not hows. Um, has been happening for me organically. I utilize people that have the knowledge for certain parts of maybe my goals or tasks, and I put them in charge of that instead of myself trying to learn it to be
Mm-hmm.
able to
Mm-hmm.
do it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and complete things. So,
Right.
utilize people for their knowledge and their expertise to help you have more free time to do other things.
Absolutely. I love it. It's such a neat, it's such a neat program and helps implement and organize and gather your thoughts. And I love the accountability aspect of all the women coming together who are like-minded because we're all striving to be better, right? And it's not like a competition, like you said. It's me
Not
versus
at all.
me, not at all, because we're all so different. But it's just me versus me, and iron sharpens iron. And it's like we're like, hey, did you do this? Hey, don't forget to do
Yeah.
this. Hey, like remember this. And so that little accountability piece is so important in our community. Now, my last
Yes.
question before I let you go is what is your best piece of advice on what you do to find balance? And I know you juggle so much as you've talked about. What do you put into place to create some kind of harmony or balance in your life? And like your parents say, to find the joy.
Live. I mean, really, quite honestly, live in the present. Do the things that you want to do. Your practice, I say this and everybody's in a different position, and I don't, some people might feel like this is actually how in the world is that going to happen, but your practice will always be there. But that doesn't mean you have to live large. That means you can go for a walk and just clear your mind. That means you can go have, time with your girlfriend and just catch up on something. You don't have to, let your practice contain you into a small box where you feel like you're stuck, just live, because as you do that and you are feeling better about yourself and doing what makes you happy, finding that joy again, the other things will start to thrive. I just think that it just happens,
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think just live and be true to yourself, and every day try to be the best version of yourself.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you for being so open and honest. Okay, well, listeners, I want to wrap things up here because Dr. Julianne has dropped a lot of juicy pearls. Okay, you have just gotten like a good solid 30 minutes or plus of so many wonderful, juicy pearls that you can learn from, that you can implement, that you can digest, that you can lean on to impact your life. And this is what it's all about. We are impactful. We share. We don't keep secrets from anybody. We are here to help you in your life. And that's what official membership, that's what official mommies do. We're not gatekeeping. We're here to see you succeed because we all can succeed together. And honestly, the information that one has, somebody else may not have, but we're here to be open about it. So I encourage you to come check out our official membership, our CEO Roundtable, our summits, our everything, because it's all here to be supportive for your growth. And if you are in a growth mindset and this year you want to grow and expand, I invite you, I encourage you to come and meet people like Dr. Julianne Digiorno. And I do want to say that it's interesting because we do have a lot of mommies whose parents are also dentists. Like in our CEO, we have a lot, and I know there's cohorts ABC, but spread throughout. We've had a lot of second, third generation mommy dentists, and it's so neat to see where everybody lands and how some women, their fathers still work for them, and it's pretty amazing. But anyway, I want to say thank you, and everyone who's listening, thank you for being part of our community. Have a great National Dentist Day, and this might be a great day to reach out to your bestie from dental school and say, hey, happy national, like we need to celebrate each other. Yeah. Because there's one thing that I don't know if Julianne, you'll agree with me. Sometimes in our Facebook feed, we'll get some practices that are like, oh, look at what my staff did for me, right? Or look at what my office manager gave me a card, or like some kind of recognition. And sometimes we have to think, I find that like some doctors who own practices, they have to realize that not all staff is aware that it's even Dentist Day, right? Like they may not even know, but don't feel like you have to measure up, or don't feel down about yourself, or don't, So I encourage you all to reach out to your bestie and say happy National Dentist Day, because again, not all teams even are aware that it's National Dentist Day.
Yes. And even just saying hi if you haven't spoken to them in a while, just to say hi. I've been thinking of you, and sometimes that opens a whole nother set of doors.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. All right. Well, take care. Thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Enjoy your day.